Yeah, this is the Weird Christian, and today I'm going to be talking about covenant and testament, and for you seekers of truth, which let's just talk about what is truth. I see truth as using three premises. You use them to question, and these premises are: is it consistent? Is it uh, omnipresent or everywhere? And is it eternal? And I think actually Jesus says, well, I know what Jesus says: I am the truth and the life. And I'm in the way, the truth, and the life. And no one comes to the Father but through me. And truth is, if you look at what I'm using for truth, is basically a characteristics of God being consistent, God being omnipresent, and God being eternal. So today I'm going to be talking about consistency. Uh, there's a tendency, there's some things you can conflate together, and it's not really a problem. But some things, if you are conflating them, you actually are having a problem, and it's going to make um, your understanding of things wrong. It's usually called a dialectic in a sense of conflating two things together. Sometimes not. Sometimes they don't seem to be that far apart. Sometimes they're close together, and you make them into to the same thing. And you can lose meaning for words when you conflate things together. Um, you know, and you can see that always happening all the time. A person disagrees with you, so you call them a racist or something like that. And so pretty soon, anybody that disagrees with you is called a racist. It's conflating the two terms together, and basically you lose the meaning of both terms. What is a racist and what is criticism? So in here, I think in the study you'll find that as I move along here, you'll find that maybe you can think about it. Maybe I'm wrong, but you can consider what's going on in this understanding of covenant and testament, conflating those two together. And so here we go. We're going to just start out. I did a question. It seems to be a pretty good way of doing it. Religions conflating covenant and testament. In religious contexts, the term covenant and testament are often conflated, particularly in Christianity, in the Christianity that we know. The concept of covenant is central to the Abrahamic religions, including Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I don't know if Islam is really concerned about covenant. They just kind of throw it in there as a part. I don't think that they have any place where they really talk about covenants, really. But anyway, it says it here. However, the conflation of covenant and testament is most prominently in Christianity, where the Hebrew word bereth, covenant, is translated as testamentum, testament in the Latin Vulgate, leading to the division of the Bible into the Old and New Testaments. So the Latin Vulgate, that was translated by Jerome. I find that interesting. But I'm going to be talking about the different theological framework when you conflate the two together and when you don't conflate the two together. So I'll be talking about that. Because in Christianity they conflate it more, and I find it interesting that Jerome. I have to learn more about Jerome, but he was an amazing person from what I know, and his ability to understand translations and so forth. And maybe the term itself has been redefined. So we'll just have to look into that, considering that. In Christianity, the term testament is used to refer to the covenants established between God and humanity. The Old Testament is seen as embodying the Mosaic covenant. The New Testament is understood as the fulfillment of the new covenant promised by the prophet Jeremiah. And this is all good in a sense. I mean, but when you look at the definitions of testament or testimony and covenant, they have different definitions. I'm just going to, from my understanding, what a covenant is, it's an agreement, okay? And it's whereas a testimony or a testament is where you describe your experience, basically. So I always considered the Old Testament as a description of God's experience with mankind, and the New Testament is God's experience, with in the new a new experience of God and humanity, which is more based on the physical character of Jesus the Christ. So, whereas the other one, well, I think it had Jesus the Christ in it too. But anyway, there's the Old Testament or testimony of the relationship between God and man, and the New Testimony after Christ came in the flesh of God and man. And this is essentially what it says. But a covenant is an agreement. So part of that testimony can be about the agreement that man and God have, but they're not the same. When you're making a testimony of how the relation is described and how it works in humanity, that's a different thing than what an actual agreement is about. So, there can be descriptions of the agreement in the Old Testament and the agreement in the New Testament, but they're not the same thing. The testimony will cover many more subjects than just the agreement. It covers the experience. It covers, how different people were doing different things. So it's more. It's a bigger circle. And to say that they're the same is to conflate them together. So there's, like in the Testament, there's discussion of even people outside the agreement and things like that. It's a much broader subject. The reason why I'm saying this, when you conflate the two together, you tend to make it, if you say the testimony of God or the actions of God in mankind is the covenant, it's a concept that God is just unilaterally doing everything, and the man is just being an object of action by God. So man is just basically a programmed character in the agreement. When you say that the testament, the whole testimony of how God works in man is the covenant, that's what comes off. It becomes a unilateral agreement, and mankind becomes not a member of, it comes out of what I consider a definition of what a covenant is. A covenant is where two parties or more make an agreement. And so it's, it may not be, it's not equal parties. I mean, in the covenant. I mean, God is God and man is man, but they do make an agreement. And to me, that's what a covenant is when you make an agreement. It's not unilateral, just by God. Now, there are groups in Christianity, especially in Christianity, that see God just doing things unilaterally, and man is just an object of his action. And man has no real ability to do anything, really. He has no ability to make his own decisions for his life. He's not responsible for his life, basically, when you come to that point. And there's different groups in Christianity that have that idea, especially presented in Calvinism. It's considered a Christian religion. Not by me, but by many people, by Calvinists themselves, consider themselves Christian. And my study of Calvinists, I consider it a Zoroastrian, Gnostic, Christian emerging of theology. So I don't really consider it as Christian. So it kind of has a cloak of Christianity, but the main theology is Zoroastrian and Gnosticism. That's how I see Calvinism. And I came to this conclusion by studying a Calvinist document, the Westminster Confession, which I believe is where England capitulated to a Calvinist theology for running its government, which I believe is Zoroastrian and Gnostic in nature, with a kind of a thrown over coat of make it look like it's Christian. They use Christian text, but I think they use mostly it in eisegesis rather than exegesis, meaning that they project their own ideas into Scripture. And Scripture doesn't actually say what they say. And you'll find that in Calvinism and in this part of Christianity, they conflate ideas together. In other words, they make a dialectic, much similar to what Hegel does in his Hegel dialectic. So, and I think that is wrong. I think God is a God in the Bible who keeps things separate, and he is himself separate. That's why it's called he's holy. He's not part of creation. He is separate from creation. He is holy. He is different than his people that he even has for him. He communicates to them. They have their abilities that he has created for them, which is be able to choose their own decisions and be responsible for their own decisions, which is not what Calvinism really teaches. And some other groups of Christian groups don't really teach. And I think when you conflate testament and covenant together, that's what happens, is that you turn man into more of a machine, and God becomes a machine because we are in the image of God. So you basically turn God into a machine, and you make God, it tends to merge everything up, and you start getting into pantheism if you actually logically extend the logic of the theology to its end, to its conclusion. And to me, it's when you start conflating covenant and testament, you're not being consistent, which is about truth, being consistent. So you're merging ideas. You're conflating them together. Some things can be conflated together, but to me, conflating testament or testimony and a covenant together, you destroy the word covenant basically, and you turn God into a unilateral actor unto man without man having any responsibility. And God can be both evil and good, which is a thing in Calvinism. But in a biblical concept, God can only be good. So this is what worries me about when Jerome was using testamentum as a word for covenant. I'm kind of worried about that. But I don't know enough about Jerome to make any statements. And also, this is in the 4th century. Words do change. So maybe testamentum meant testimony, as in you're in a court and you make your testimony, which is not what a covenant or a contract is. So I'm not familiar enough to know the history of the Latin Vulgate and the history of Jerome to make a statement about what he's saying. But if he was confusing testament with covenant in the terms that I'm talking about now, I would be very much worried about Jerome's understanding of the words. We'd be very worried about, and anybody who followed Jerome, because I think that is a real problem in understanding the biblical God, who makes it a point, even from the beginning, to keep terms and ideas separate so that you can actually, an objective, rather than merging terms together. Like he didn't say, and it was light, and it was night, or dark, therefore it's twilight. That's not what he said in creation. He doesn't reveal himself as that. He said there was a night part, or a dark part, and a light part, or a part, and that became a day. So that's not merging the two. That's just saying that a day has two components to it, a night part and a day part, or a night part and a light part, I guess I should say, a dark part and a light part. It has two components. Therefore, he's defining day as that. But he's not merging them together into a twilight, always being twilight. So, and man or woman, a man is a man, a woman is a woman. He's not saying, and they shall be trans. That's what would, they are one, but that's one in terms of a type. He's not merging the two into kind of an opposite of, what's it called? Mitosis. It's not the opposite of mitosis. I think that mitosis is where you have one together and you separate them into two. I think that's what that is. And instead you're making the two and then turning them into one creature. He doesn't say that that's what's happening. They're not turned into one creature where you have them merge in that sense. And many people would consider that, even any Christians, I would say, even anybody calling them Christians would consider that, an image of, I forget the fellow's name. There's a fellow that, he's got you know, women features and man features and animal features and all sorts of different features, and he's that character emerging of everything together. And that's not the understanding of God that is created in the Bible. That's more of a Gnostic understanding of God. So I think that the term, when you conflate covenant and testament together, basically you're conforming to a Gnostic understanding of the Bible, which is a problem. I understand it is a problem, and it's to get away from truth, which is consistency. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I was going to go to this other part about covenant and the word itself. Well, maybe I'll just go through it. In the Greek New Testament, it's diatheke, which means a formal agreement. It doesn't mean the testimony of a person in court or a testimony of somebody's life. It's a formal agreement. An agreement is you have to have two parties or more, and you make an agreement between the two using your words. So I hope you understand what I'm saying, is that when you conflate the two together, you turn God into a person who's unilaterally working on with man, and man really doesn't have a choice on anything. He becomes just an object of of God's action. Therefore, anything a man does is justified because God is making him do it. And this is not Christianity, though some people think it is. It's wrong. Okay, anyway, if you have a different understanding or a different concept on that, you can leave a thing in the comments. If you like this content, you can subscribe or like this content. Usually, well, you decide what you want to do. It's not my business to tell you what to do. But anyway, take a look in the Word, find out if I'm making any sense to you. If you're concerned about what I'm saying, I think it's a big concern when we start mixing terms and ideas. To me, it's very Orwellian, and we have to be very aware of not doing that. It's basically a breaking down of the language, and it's manipulating language so that you can present something as truth when it's not truth, which, to me, in my understanding of what happened in the garden, is the tree of good and knowledge is actually that. It's manipulating what is good and what is evil to create your own truth. But that's not what is in the world. They think it's something else. Some think it's about consciousness, and some think it's about life in general, and merging is okay. To me, that's all using rhetoric to words to make an argument. In the process, you probably might destroy the language. So, anyway, God bless. Look at the words. Try to understand what I'm talking about. Know its importance. Make any comments. And may God bless you.